Everybody, welcome back to Leosophy. This is the second in the tea series, and I thought about talking about from basically like oxidation to low oxidation, that order. But then I realized that if I was going to talk about oolongs, which are my favorites, I would need to talk about greens first, because oolongs are kind of like a cross between blacks and greens. So, as I mentioned in a previous video, black teas are teas that have been fully oxidized. Fully oxidized. So, green teas are on the other end of the spectrum. They're teas that have been arrested by heat. Those enzymes have been destroyed that cause the oxidation process. So as a result, there's very little oxidation that's taken place. And for this reason, what you end up with is a tea that is the same color, roughly, as the leaves themselves, which is to say green. And what's interesting about that is, one, the flavor profile. Instead of being bold and fruity and tannic and all those qualities that people associate with black tea, instead green teas are very grassy and vegetal in flavor. They tend to be much lighter in flavor, but and what's interesting is that tannic bite is still there. It's just different. I would argue that it's a little sharper, a little more astringent, and a little less what I would call conventionally bitter, because there's bitter and there's astringent. They're a little different. And I would argue that black tea has a mild bitterness to it, and green tea has a mild astringency to it, a sharper kind of quality. Now, the reason why green teas are often touted as a much healthier alternative to black teas. By the way, all teas have unique compounds that can be good for you in reasonable amounts. You know, I've said this in previous videos, but quoting Paracelsus, any substance is a poison and any substance is an antidote. It's a question of the dosage, not the substance itself. Well, similarly, all teas are healthy in certain quantities. But the reason why green teas are often touted as particularly healthy is because they are more packed, substantially more packed, with antioxidants. And the reason why they're packed with antioxidants is because, again, that oxidative process has been arrested. What's really happening in the case of antioxidants, the reason why they're called that, is because they bond readily to oxygen. And when you drink them, they bond ready to oxygen in your body. And free radicals, which are a real thing, it sounds like pseudoscience, they're just the term, but basically those are just atomic particles that are not bound to any particular atom, and so they're bouncing around physically, causing damage to your DNA. And so an antioxidant, what it does is, because it's in need of that spare electron, it will bind to it and stabilize it, and now it's not bouncing around, hitting your DNA, damaging it, and potentially causing cancer. That's really all an antioxidant is. Well, why does black tea have fewer amounts? Well, it's oxidized. It's already bound to those free radicals. It's just bound to free radicals that are in the atmosphere rather than in your body. So it's already done that job. So that's the reason why green tea is often touted as such a healthy alternative to any other kind of beverage. It is over-exaggerated. However, green tea also is very high in ECGC and caffeine. And by the way, it's a common misconception that green tea has less caffeine than black tea. It actually has more. But what I personally like about tea in general is I love the synergy of ECGC, which is not necessarily depressant, but arguably so. And then caffeine is a stimulant, and it creates an interesting mental state for me where I am not jittery like with coffee. I'm very relaxed but energized, and I think green tea exemplifies that very well. Even though I think all teas really have that particular side effect, if you want to call it that. But if you're interested in trying green teas, unfortunately, it's probably the more difficult to get into without breaking the bank, other than Puers, which I'll cover later, simply because there's so many. I mean, there's just so many. You know, as I mentioned with black teas, you got India and Sri Lanka as your main places, and then China to a lesser extent. Well, with green teas, I mean, there's Japanese green teas, which in my opinion, I love them, but they all do kind of sort of taste the same. They're very strongly flavored, but it is one kind of flavor. And then you got the Chinese green teas, of which there are, I don't even know how many, countless, I suppose, and they're much more diverse. There are some that are soft and sweet and aromatic like a flower, and then there are others that are very strong and astringent and potent like drinking grass almost. So they vary a lot. If you want to get into green teas, I actually recommend trying Sencha, Japanese variety, Pilo Chun, which is probably my favorite Chinese green, Dragon Well, also a very good variety. By the way, Pilo Chun translates to green snail spring. You might see it labeled that way. And Dragon Well is Longjing. So look for either of those. But all of those are really good varieties that you can sort of play around with and see if you like them. And they're all substantially better, those loose leaf forms, than what you'd find at the grocery store. So I think that's a good way to get into green teas. That's pretty much what green teas are. Culturally, you normally drink them straight as they are hot, but you can absolutely have this southern sweetened iced tea, and I think sweetening it with honey is substantially better than sugar in that particular context. But yeah, to truly appreciate tea, I'm not against sweetening it. By all means, sweeten it. But if you really want to know what Pilo Chun, for example, tastes like, don't sweeten it. Same thing with Dragon Well. Like if you want to sweeten green tea, buy the bagged stuff at the grocery store. Don't go all out. That's like, I don't know, buying a high-end Pinot Noir and using it to make sangria, you know? So that's all I got. Like, share, subscribe, keep asking questions. Bye.